Hey, how's everybody doing? How great is this Team X staff? They're doing a really great job. So I'm David. Today, we're going to talk about horizontal storytelling. And a lot of times, when you're waiting for an Uber and you're outside, you have a moment. And you can choose how to spend that however you want to spend it. And a lot of times what people will do is they'll get out their phone, they'll look around, and they'll end up on the Facebook newsfeed. And maybe they'll see a picture that their crazy aunt shared. Or maybe they'll see a marriage announcement from an old high school friend. Or maybe they'll see a suggested page that they should probably like because their second cousin likes Pokemon Go. And are these really the stories that matter to us? And when we think about story, I'm increasingly seeing that the stories that matter to most people are very surface level, and the deeper stories that you want to get are increasingly harder to find and less important. And when I say story, what I mean is what actually happened. And when I say news, what I mean is the accurate and the inaccurate information that surrounds the actual event. And then whenever we look at medium, it is how and when we're able to consume the news and the story. And I have good news for you. Like never before, you can be the storyteller of your own story. But unfortunately, that story has a lot of ads around it. And you'll have ads before it and after it and above it and below it. And that's just how it works. And on Facebook, people want to project their best self. And they want to let people know that you can be a part of this perception. And we should be so fortunate to be able to post our bikini pictures and our selfies and our family photos, because it wasn't so long ago that you couldn't, and the right to publish and broadcast to many people was a right of the privileged and the select few. So I want to talk about how death can be news for a moment. And it starts with storytelling is what unites all of us. It's the human experience, and nothing exists in a vacuum. And as we start looking around, it's how we make sense of everything. It's how we connect the dots. It's how our brains are actually function. We're actually evolved that whenever we see a data point, we start telling a story about it. And we start to create this narration of what's going on and why it's happening, and we'll make things into characters, and we'll base characters on people we've met before in our real life, and it's just what we do as people. And every time something happens, we have to ask ourselves, what actually happened? What does it mean to us? And then how does it affect me? I used to be a newspaper reporter once upon a time. And when I started as a newspaper reporter, I was the low man on the totem pole, and I got a lot of jobs that weren't reporting. And this is just what it's like when you enter the field. And I was paginating the weather page, retitling the advice columns from the Associated Press, and I would also edit the obituaries or death announcements. And I would deal directly with the bereaved family, and I would process their payments. And they would have to pay to be listed in our newspaper and announce that their loved one had died. And one day, when I was a few months on the job, and I had put in my death announcements for the day, the managing editor came over, and he said, "What happened to this guy? He was 28. And I thought to myself, I didn't ask the family. Whatever the family wanted to say about him, that was cool. That's the way I saw it. And he said, when young people die, it's news. Go find out what happened to this guy. His name was Tom. And it struck me because I didn't have a ton of respect for this managing editor before, and it was about being new on the job, but it was also because he was the first person I ever met that would regularly fall asleep while pooping in the office bathroom. But this one, it kind of stuck with me because as a journalist, I was like, I should know. And, whenever you're in the newspaper industry, everything revolves around 2 a.m., getting all the newspaper done before sunrise. And that's the story that happened. So I called the police, I called his friends, and I found out he died in a motorbike accident. Nothing too, outlandish or surprising for Middle America. It's just, that's how he died, and we reported it in the local news section. And then at the end of the local news article, it linked to his obituary, and in his obituary, you could read the story that his family said. And that's how Tom's story lives on today. Now, the idea I want to share with you is how vertical stories have become horizontal stories. And it starts with this. How did the internet change as a medium how stories are consumed? And I want to leave you or help you with this comparison where the distribution of stories used to be like rivers, and now it's like water everywhere, and it just splatters everywhere. And when I look at the status update, I look at the status update like a raindrop in the countryside on the crops. And when I look at the status update, I look at it like a raindrop on the driver's side window in the car in the city. And it's all trying to reach this ocean of the ever elusive full story. And it can feel very elusive because now, like when a tragedy is to happen, like what happened in Orlando, Florida, in America, and in Nice, France recently, this needless violence can feel like it's always ongoing because every minute there's another status update, there's more water about what actually happened, and then every second there's another piece of commentary on, what that means. And it's because the internet is inherently participatory. And whenever we look at the internet, we're not just readers. So you see here, sign in with Google, sign in with Twitter, sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook. It's on repeat. We always are a part of the story. And with all of these likes on Facebook, the noise that we have on Twitter, and the screenshots that we're taking on Snapchat, we, the mass, in the term mass media, have shifted to the storytellers becoming part of the story. And this is a big shift away from how, the generation before us was raised. It was very much broadcasting, and it's from the TV, from the radio. The last generations, it was a very one to nothing. And now I look at it as with social media, we're getting back to our roots, and we're actually entering story distribution as something that happens by word of mouth, which is much more organic. And whenever we get back to the very beginning of word of mouth, we have to start with the cave painting. Today, what's on our walls is seen by everyone. It's not seen by just who enters your cave. And cave paintings, they've been around for 40,000 years, while Facebook's been around for 12. So that's how fast this change in story consumption is really happening. We don't know what the effects are of it yet. But cave painting, many think it started because of a term called hunting magic. And what this term actually means is if I paint a buffalo on my cave, and then it makes it more likely that when I go outside hunting, there's going to be a buffalo. And a lot of people think like this level of self-fulfilling prophecy is how stories started, and I really agree with it because people won't listen to a story unless it helps them, unless there's a hope that their future can be better. And it doesn't mean if I draw a buffalo, there's going to be a buffalo, but the idea that I record what happened today so that I can have a better tomorrow when I wake up in the morning, I think is something we all can relate to. And we can look at the different things we did today to create a better tomorrow. And I would ask yourselves to say, what did I do when I woke up this morning? And, when I think about the morning, I think about water, the bathroom, and the phone. And so many times, the phone, the need to check back in how we're connected to the stories that happened while we were sleeping can become more important than a bodily function. A lot of people would rather see, who messaged them. They would rather see what happened on their wall, what their newsfeed says before even getting water. And when we think about what this means in today's world, it's tough. We're living in a society where everything is ephemeral, yet it saves somewhere, and it's always subject to change. That everything is time-stamped, and we just it's a very difficult thing for me to wrap my head around as we look at hey, this story can be changed. The editor can change the story, the social media platform can delete it, or someone else can rewrite it and make a new version of it. And we're constantly being fed news. We're being fed happenings. We're being fed stories. We're being fed the curations of the pages we follow. And curations are a form of sacrificing choice. And every curator, like every publisher online, they have an interest, and that's not your interest. So it's about what's in it for the poster. It's about what's in it for me. And it's called a news feed because it feeds you. We need what it offers. And as we look around about what we see and how we consume it, it's just like this guy here as we're looking around. We become it. As we look around and we consume everything, we're waiting for our Uber, and we look at our news feed. We are consumed by it. We become it. As we look around, we consume it. And this is why I'm looking at it as the horizontal generation and the horizontal storytelling. Everything is much easier to look at as a headline, and we prefer headlines to articles. We prefer reviews to books. We prefer pictures to letters. And when we see a ... on Facebook of a headline, we don't even have the time or the whereabout to go click through and read a whole headline, let alone an article. And at the same time, we're consuming more content than anyone has ever consumed. This generation, the amount that we are actually reading and listening a day is crazy. And yet we have no time for the depth of any single story. And whenever the next headline comes upon us, how are we actually going to be able to place its context in history? How do we understand the gravity of what we're dealing with? Just a few weeks ago in America, you're looking at police officers in Dallas being killed, and you have Fox News going around saying it's a lone gunman. You have the activists of BlackLivesMatters saying that it's an organized crime, and you have the public not knowing anything and just sitting there. And when we look at how the news is being given to us, how algorithms are forcing what we decide, news is shared in two ways. It's shared by how viral it is and the interest of the platform. And that's how news is shared. And then both of those things are very valid ways to populate a news feed. But they are both inherently flawed. And we've seen this flaw. This was Facebook's solution to the flaw. Get every story that there could possibly be is grouped into these 7 reactions. And this is how I got this far in a talk about modern communication and finally brought up the emoji, which I'm very excited about. But it's a really trivial endeavor to go out and say we can group every reaction to every story into these 7 things. And Facebook admitted it was a very trivial endeavor because they hired 700 people to monitor lab rats and check how they interacted with the feed and how good it was matching to their own personal interests. So I ask you to consider the platform's interest versus your own. In a time when Facebook is putting great emphasis on what's trending, and Twitter is putting great emphasis on moments, And Snapchat is putting great emphasis on discovery. It's becoming overwhelmingly clear to me that the social media platform is drawing a firm editorial line, and it's telling you what content you should consume based on their business interests. And whenever you think of it like Hollywood, it becomes down to a kind of a simple question. Does the movie exist to sell products? Or when you watch the movie and you do just happen to notice product placement? And I want to say this is really a very, very dangerous time for a powerful storyteller to be alive with ill intentions. With great horizontal storytelling, you can enter the newsfeed like a strobe light. Just here you are again. And I don't want this guy in my newsfeed. I can block him. I can do whatever, and he just keeps appearing. No matter what I do, he just keeps appearing in the newsfeed. And if he has a 50-50 shot to become leader of the free world, then storytelling has a 50-50 shot to be the greatest weapon known to man. And I say that, but I don't want to blame storytelling, because we have to look around at the collective mirror at ourselves, because we're the one sharing him, we're the one commenting on him, we're the one perpetuating it. Storytelling didn't used to be this way. It used to be go around the campfire, and the hunter could come back and he could finally tell that story that he's been waiting to tell about how he killed a buffalo. And now it's just not like that. It's about constant updates. It's about flash marketing, re-entering the news feed, and these updates that are very simple to comprehend, and they just keep seeping into our minds. Over time, this is what it takes to tell a story. I mean, look at Kanye. Whenever he launches an album, he doesn't say, Life of Pablo is now available. He tweets the most controversial thing he can 5 times a day for 5 weeks. And he just appears in all of our news cycles. And all the news outlets are left saying, Kanye said this crazy thing. By the way, his album's out. Buy it here. And we're perpetuating it, and I don't think that's the news feed we want. So lastly, what does this all mean for the storyteller? I say with great optimism, our only limited resource is time. And that's a really powerful thing. And as we have this battle for the news feed and this limited attention, we have to know that the battle, they are making the choices, and we have to understand that. So whenever they're making the choices of what appears, so if you have a problem with the news feed, you're not going to do something and they're going to change it unless it makes them money. And don't get too upset about it, because there's still, at the same time, I would say there's never been a better time to be alive if you're a storyteller, because with a click of the button, your story and your message can reach hundreds and thousands of people. So whenever you look around, you don't want to blame the platform. You can say, let Facebook get theirs, and I'll get my message out, and I'll get mine. But as you look around, and when you leave here and you open your phone again, and you're scrolling down, and you see that next post, ask yourself, why is this in my personal space? But with all that, if I have to be advertised upon to reach the people like you and the communities that I want to reach, so be the future of media. I will continue to share where people consume.